In the heart of Newport, Rhode Island, overlooking the restless waves of the Atlantic, there stands a mansion so grand it seems almost unreal, a palace of opulence. Ambition and silent battles fought behind its gilded walls. Rosecliff Mansion was not simply built to house a family. It was constructed to command attention, to awe, and to dominate a society where wealth and lineage were weapons in a game of social warfare. From the moment its foundations were laid in the early 1900s, Rosecliff was destined to be more than stone, marble, and sweeping staircases. It was destined to be a stage, a proving ground, and a symbol of ultimate status for the Gilded Age elite. Commissioned by Teresa Fair Ulrichs, heiress to the Comstock silver fortune, the mansion reflected her singular vision of grandeur, elegance, and power. She was a woman determined not only to live in luxury but to shape the social order, to control who rose and who fell in the unforgiving hierarchy of Newport's social season. Every corner of Rosecliff, from its sweeping ballroom to its intricately carved moldings, was a calculated statement, a whisper of dominance in a world where a misstep in etiquette could erase decades of prestige. Yet beneath the sparkling crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors, there was another story, a story of ruthless ambition. Rivalries sharpened like knives and the relentless pursuit of recognition. The mansion's halls would bear witness to whispered gossip, veiled threats, and public humiliations that could destroy reputations in a single evening. The spectacle of opulence was only the surface. Underneath, social warfare raged with quiet ferocity. Guests arrived not merely to admire the beauty of the rooms or the grandeur of the parties, but to navigate an invisible battlefield, where alliances were fragile and a misjudged comment could spell social exile. Rosecliff was more than architecture. It was theater, politics, and strategy fused into stone and glass. In the years that followed, the mansion would host some of the most legendary gatherings in American high society, balls that dazzled, masquerades that mesmerized, and dinners where the future of family reputations could be decided over a single toast. And yet, even as Rosecliff's walls echoed with laughter, music, and the clinking of crystal glasses, they also held the secrets of ambition, envy, and quiet vendettas that would shape the lives of those who crossed its threshold. In telling the story of Rosecliff, we are not just recounting the history of a mansion. We are peeling back the layers of a society obsessed with status. A world where power was measured not in influence or policy, but in who was seen, who was invited, and who was whispered about when they left the room. This is the story of Rosecliff, a palace built to impress, a battlefield disguised as a ballroom, and a monument to the gilded ambitions of those who would stop at nothing to be. Remember, the story of Rosecliff Mansion cannot be told without first understanding the woman who conceived it and the era that demanded such grandeur. Teresa Fair Ulrichs, heiress to one of the great silver fortunes of the Comstock Lode, was no ordinary socialite. Born into a world where wealth was inherited and power was displayed through lavish spectacles, she understood from a young age that money alone was insufficient. One could amass riches, but without the acknowledgement of elite society, one remained invisible, a shadow in the corridors of real influence. Newport, Rhode Island, during the Gilded Age, was a city of carefully orchestrated social hierarchies, where summer cottages were palaces, and the social calendar was the battlefield. Here, families displayed their wealth with architectural audacity and hosted gatherings designed to assert dominance, cement alliances, or subtly humiliate rivals. In such a world, Teresa's decision to build Rosecliff was a statement of intent. She was not merely constructing a home. She was staking a claim in the social consciousness of the American elite. She hired Stamford White, one of the most renowned architects of the time, a man whose designs were celebrated for blending classical European elegance with modern American ambition. White was the ideal partner to transform Teresa's vision into reality, and the mansion that rose on Bellevue Avenue was nothing short of extraordinary. Drawing inspiration from the Grand Trianon at Versailles, Rosecliff was designed as a testament to refinement and sophistication. Its symmetrical facade, towering Corinthian columns, and expansive terraces were intended to awe even the most discerning of visitors. But while its architecture spoke of European grandeur, the interior was designed for the singular purpose of social conquest. The great ballroom, measuring over 6,000 square feet, was the heart of the mansion and a battlefield in its own right. It was here that the real games of Newport society were played. Guests would arrive in carriages, draped in silks and jewels, their reputations meticulously curated before the moment they stepped onto the polished marble floors. Every movement, every glance, and every word spoken within these walls was laden with strategy. A misstep in conversation could result in exclusion from the next season, a fate worse than financial ruin in a world where social capital was more valuable than gold. The very design of Rosecliff facilitated these intricate dances of power. Balconies overlooked the ballroom, providing vantage points for whispered observation, while hidden corridors allowed the discreet passage of staff carrying messages, gifts, or, in some cases, subtle threats. Mirrors were strategically placed to create an illusion of endless space, but they also reflected the subtle hierarchies at play, the position one held in the room, the proximity to the host, and the attention lavished upon particular guests could be read at a glance by those trained to see the signs. Yet, for all its grandeur, Rosecliff was also a place of isolation. Theresa Fair Ulrichs, despite her wealth and ambition, was acutely aware of the fragility of her position. Newport society was a world where fortunes could be eclipsed overnight by scandal, and even the most meticulously cultivated reputation could be destroyed with a single misstep. Within the walls of Rosecliff, the pressure to perform was constant, and the lines between private pleasure and public scrutiny were permanently blurred. Behind the elegance, there was tension, a constant undercurrent of anxiety that would shape the experiences of every guest and resident. The mansion's gardens, designed with the same meticulous attention as its interiors, served as both a retreat and a stage. Expansive lawns and carefully manicured flower beds were the setting for outdoor concerts, croquet matches, and summer promenades, each event a carefully calculated display of wealth and refinement. Here too, social strategy played out, alliances were formed, loyalties tested, and subtle rivalries enacted under the gaze of the Atlantic sun. Beyond the architecture and the gardens, Rosecliff staff played an essential role in maintaining the delicate balance of appearances. Servants were not merely attendants. They were actors in the theater of social warfare, trained to anticipate the needs of guests, deliver messages with discretion, and, in some cases, enforce the subtle hierarchies that dictated who was welcomed and who was excluded. Their loyalty was tested constantly, and breaches of discretion could result in dismissal or disgrace. Yet, despite the calculated perfection of Rosecliff, the mansion was not immune to tragedy. Over the decades, it would witness heartbreak, financial strain, and personal loss. The pressures of maintaining such a property, both socially and financially, weighed heavily on its owners, revealing the darker side of Gilded Age opulence. In a world obsessed with appearances, even the most beautiful structures could not shield their inhabitants from the harsh realities of life. And Rosecliff, for all its grandeur, became a silent witness to human vulnerability. The mansion's place in history is inseparable from the social and economic context of its time. It was built during an era when American industry created fortunes unimaginable to previous generations. And yet, it was also an era defined by rigid social hierarchies, intense competition, and the constant need to demonstrate one's worth in public. Rosecliff was both a product and a symbol of this world, a structure that reflected not only the aspirations of its owner, but also the expectations and anxieties of an entire society. To walk through Rosecliff is to step into a world where beauty and cruelty coexisted, where every surface was polished to perfection, and every smile could conceal ambition or resentment. The mansion remains a testament to the complexities of the Gilded Age, a reminder that behind the glittering facades of wealth, there were battles fought daily in whispers and glances, in invitations extended or withheld, and in the subtle power plays that defined elite society. Rosecliff is not merely a house. It is a narrative of human ambition, societal pressure, and the intricate dance between power and vulnerability, a story written in marble. crystal, and the shadows that linger long after the guests have departed. As Rosecliff neared completion in the early 1900s, the world outside its grandiose walls continued to evolve at a dizzying pace, and with it, the pressures on its occupants intensified. Teresa Fair Ulrichs, now fully aware of the attention her mansion had commanded even before its doors were opened, approached the debut season with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Newport society, though enamored with the display of wealth, was unforgiving in its judgments, and every event at Rosecliff became a trial by scrutiny. Invitations were not merely formalities, they were instruments of influence. Each name inscribed on the embossed stationery carried the weight of reputation, connections, and social standing. A carefully excluded family could suffer damage to their public image that might linger for years, while those who attended were expected to navigate the intricate choreography of conversation, observation, and subtle signaling. The debut of Rosecliff was set against a backdrop of immense anticipation. Guests arrived in horse-drawn carriages, their garments shimmering under the gaslights. A parade of opulence designed to impress not just those present, but the society that would later read of the event in the gossip columns and society pages. For many, stepping into the mansion was akin to entering a living theater, where every corridor, every balcony, and every marble surface was a stage set for performance. In the ballroom, the heart of Rosecliff's social machinery, Teresa ensured that every detail was meticulously orchestrated. Chandeliers imported from Europe cast a brilliant light over the polished floors, highlighting the dancers in elaborate gowns and tuxedos, while strategically positioned mirrors amplified the space and reflected the movements of guests, turning the room into a kaleidoscope of power, beauty, and subtle rivalry. The acoustics, carefully designed by White himself, carried whispers and murmurs to every corner, allowing keen observers to catch fragments of conversation, alliances, or slights. It was here that the subtlety of Newport's social warfare played out most vividly. Guests watched one another as much as they were watched, measuring glances, noting the favor of the host, and calibrating their own comportment to avoid social missteps. A careless remark could result in exclusion from the following season, a penalty that carried more weight than financial ruin for those whose identity was bound to social validation. Outside, the gardens of Rosecliff extended the arena of influence into nature itself. Terraced lawns, sculpted fountains, and carefully arranged floral displays created spaces for private discussions, courtships, and strategic conversations. Croquet matches and garden strolls were not simply leisure activities. They were opportunities for observation and negotiation, with every gesture scrutinized and interpreted by those attuned to the subtle dynamics of power. Teresa understood that the true strength of her position lay not in the marble or gold of her mansion, but in the perception of mastery over her domain. She cultivated relationships with precision, rewarding loyalty, and punishing those whose intentions or behavior threatened the delicate balance of her social influence. But for all its control and planning, Rosecliff was a stage for human emotion, and not all drama could be scripted. Rumors, jealousies, and rivalries erupted despite the elegance of the surroundings, and the mansion, with its labyrinthine corridors and hidden alcoves, became a repository for secrets. Staff, often invisible yet essential to the mansion's operations, bore witness to confidences shared in whispers, gestures of intimacy, and moments of humiliation. Their discretion was paramount, for even a single leak could alter the trajectory of social standing, reshaping the alliances and enmities that dictated the ebb and flow of Newport society. Financially, the maintenance of Rosecliff imposed a hidden weight that was less visible but no less significant. The sheer scale of the mansion demanded an army of servants, from cooks and maids to gardeners and chauffeurs, each compensated with salaries that reflected both their skills and the necessity of discretion. Large-scale events required meticulous planning, with imported furnishings, expensive linens, and rare delicacies to impress guests accustomed to the finest that Europe could offer. Each gala, each dinner, each garden party became an expensive exercise in social engineering, where the cost of miscalculation could be social invisibility. Teresa's personal life, intertwined with her public persona, added another layer of complexity. Marriages, scandals, and alliances within elite society were often influenced as much by strategic calculation as by affection. Rosecliff, as the vessel of her influence, bore witness to these maneuvers. In private chambers, decisions were made that could alter the course of fortunes, and in the drawing rooms, whispered conversations carried consequences that would ripple through families for generations. Beyond the immediate drama of Newport, Rosecliff also reflected the broader tensions of the Gilded Age, a period of immense wealth coupled with intense scrutiny, where industrial fortunes created new social hierarchies and challenged old notions of class and taste. The mansion became a symbol not only of individual ambition, but also of the intersection between wealth and morality, the public display of opulence masking personal insecurities and vulnerabilities. White's architectural genius ensured that Rosecliff could accommodate both grandeur and intimacy, allowing for public pageantry as well as private council. Secret corridors, private galleries, and secluded balconies allowed for meetings and conversations away from prying eyes, while the main spaces remained arenas for observation and display. It was a delicate balance, one that Teresa mastered over time, understanding that true influence required both visibility and invisibility, both grandeur and discretion. Yet, as the years passed, Rosecliff's walls began to echo with the strains of inevitability. Despite the careful management of social relationships, the pressures of maintaining dominance in Newport's elite circles were unrelenting. Rivals emerged, scandals arose, and the mansion itself became a mirror reflecting the fragile human ambitions contained within. Each guest, each event, each whispered conversation became part of a narrative larger than any individual, one that intertwined wealth, power, and social cunning in a tapestry as intricate as the mansion's architectural details. The mansion's significance extended beyond Newport, influencing perceptions of American aristocracy and the role of women within these circles. Teresa Fair Ulrich's ability to assert authority through her environment, her taste, and her strategic acumen demonstrated that power could be wielded subtly, yet effectively, shaping alliances, guiding reputations, and determining the fates of those who sought entry into her world. In essence, Rosecliff was a crucible of human behavior, where ambition met etiquette, desire met restraint, and appearances dictated reality. The mansion, in all its elegance, became a testament to the interplay between architecture, social strategy, and human psychology. It remains, even today, a symbol of the complexity, beauty, and peril inherent in the elite social games of the Gilded Age. To walk its halls is to encounter not only the physical grandeur of marble, crystal, and sculpted wood, but also the invisible forces that shaped human destinies, the subtle rivalries and alliances that defined the lives of those who aspired to be remembered in the annals of society. Rosecliff, in its silent grandeur, tells a story of ambition, strategy, and the delicate art of social warfare, a story that continues to captivate historians, architects, and the curious alike. A reminder that behind every magnificent facade lies a world of calculated power and human vulnerability. By the middle of the Newport season, Rosecliff had become far more than a mansion. It had transformed into a theater of influence where every gesture, every arrangement, and every invitation carried profound significance. The public spectacle of its opulence was mirrored by a quieter, more insidious battle behind closed doors. While the glittering ballroom receptions and garden parties projected an image of effortless control, the reality was that Teresa Fair Ulrichs was constantly navigating treacherous social waters, balancing ambition with diplomacy, charm with strategy. The mansion's architecture, designed by the renowned Stanford White, was not simply a testament to European grandeur transplanted to American soil. It was a calculated instrument of power. The sweeping staircases, expansive galleries, and mirrored walls created spaces in which observation was not only possible but inevitable. A whispered conversation in one alcove could travel across the room through reflection, echo, or strategically placed confidence, while the interplay of light and shadow offered both drama and concealment. White's design facilitated the orchestration of public perception, a tool that Teresa wielded with precision. Inside Rosecliff, the elaborate interiors reflected more than taste, they projected authority. Venetian mirrors lined the walls, their gilded frames capturing and magnifying movements of every guest, turning the mansion into a living panorama of social interaction. Frescoes, imported chandeliers, and meticulously crafted fireplaces were not merely decorative. They were symbols of power, deliberate choices meant to convey sophistication, heritage, and the inevitability of wealth. Every object, every arrangement, was curated to impress and intimidate, to remind visitors of the mastery of their hostess over both space and circumstance. Yet behind the grandeur lay a delicate tension. Social hierarchies were constantly being negotiated, challenged, and enforced. Invitations, far from being simple courtesies, became instruments of strategy. A slight delay in delivery, a carefully worded refusal, or the subtle inclusion of a rival's enemy could alter the social landscape for the entire season. Families that had once assumed dominance could find themselves marginalized by the perception of disfavor, and the slightest misstep could unravel carefully cultivated reputations. The mansion, in this sense, was both stage and weapon, a fortress of etiquette where the consequences of error were swift and unrelenting. Even the staff, invisible to many, played an essential role in this theater. Housekeepers, maids, footmen, and cooks were privy to the intricacies of negotiation, the private gestures of intimacy, and the whispered discussions that determined social fate. Their discretion was as valuable as the marble columns that lined the halls. Misplaced information or a rumor leaked from the servants' quarters could destabilize alliances, fuel jealousy, or ignite conflict among families whose fortunes and reputations depended upon careful management of appearances. Financially, maintaining Rosecliff's grandeur demanded enormous resources. Imported furnishings, intricate textiles, and lavish meals were not indulgences but necessities, each chosen to reinforce status and impress upon guests the seriousness of Teresa's influence. Ballrooms had to be cleaned and polished to perfection, gardens manicured with precision, and table settings arranged with meticulous care. Every event was an expensive exercise in dominance, where the cost of miscalculation could not only affect social standing, but threaten the financial equilibrium of the household. In addition, the mansion served as a crucible for the social ambitions of young women. Debutantes and their families looked to Rosecliff as the ultimate proving ground, where beauty, manners, and intelligence were evaluated under the scrutiny of peers and the host. A successful presentation in the mansion could cement a family's standing for generations, while failure could result in subtle but lasting exclusion from the highest circles of Newport society. Meanwhile, the pressures of this environment were not without personal cost. Teresa herself had to navigate the treacherous interplay of social expectation, personal desire, and public perception. Her role was both performance and command, a continuous balancing act in which a single misstep could undermine years of careful strategy. The mansion's labyrinthine corridors and private rooms became refuges for contemplation, where decisions were made, strategies revised, and alliances assessed. These private moments, though unseen by most, shaped the course of events that unfolded publicly, reinforcing the notion that Rosecliff's true power lay in its capacity to influence human behavior subtly yet profoundly. Beyond the mansion's walls, Newport itself functioned as a microcosm of Gilded Age America, where wealth, class, and ambition intersected in highly visible ways. Families vied for recognition, marriages were often strategic, and the accumulation of social capital could rival the importance of financial gain. Rosecliff, in this context, was both a prize and a weapon. It symbolized the ability to command attention, assert influence, and enforce hierarchy. The mansion's events were not mere gatherings but exercises in dominance, a continual performance that required constant vigilance, intuition, and deft handling of complex social currents. As the season progressed, rivalries became more pronounced, alliances more intricate, and the mansion's halls reverberated with the subtle tensions of competition. Conversations carried layered meanings, gestures were loaded with implication, and the very arrangement of seating or position within a room could signal favor, disfavor, or the shifting balance of power. It was an arena in which social intelligence mattered as much as wealth, and those unskilled in its nuances risked irrelevance despite their fortune. The interplay of public display and private maneuvering made Rosecliff a unique social laboratory, revealing the intricate mechanisms by which influence was asserted and maintained. Even seemingly trivial moments, a glance, a smile, a whispered aside, could have repercussions across the social spectrum, affecting reputations, marriages, and opportunities. The mansion, elegant and imposing, was a silent observer of these dynamics, its architecture amplifying both grandeur and tension. Over time, Rosecliff became inseparable from the identity of its host. Theresa Fair Ulrich's name was synonymous with the mansion, and the public equated her taste, intelligence, and strategic acumen with the house itself. In this way, Rosecliff was both a monument and an instrument, reflecting the ambitions, fears, and skill of its mistress. Its walls contained not only marble and crystal but the human dramas that defined an era, capturing the interplay of wealth, power, and social cunning in ways that would resonate for decades. The mansion's influence extended beyond the immediate season, shaping perceptions of American aristocracy and reinforcing the cultural narrative of the Gilded Age. It was a symbol of what could be achieved through a combination of fortune, taste, and strategic insight, a reminder that in the rarefied world of Newport society, true power lay not merely in possession, but in mastery of the subtle arts of influence, perception, and social warfare. By the end of the season, Rosecliff had established itself as more than a residence. It had become a testament to the calculated complexity of elite society, a monument to the interplay of ambition, etiquette, and human psychology, and a lasting symbol of the extraordinary lengths to which individuals would go to assert dominance, secure influence, and shape the narrative of their lives within the gilded cage of social expectation. By the time the Rosecliff season reached its apex, the mansion had evolved into something far beyond a simple residence. It was a battlefield, a stage where fortunes and reputations were decided with a single glance or a whispered remark. The Ulrichs family, aware of the power that came with hosting in such a legendary space, understood that social success in Newport was as much about psychology and perception as it was about wealth. Guests who arrived expecting opulence found themselves swept into a carefully orchestrated environment where every detail, from the placement of furniture to the timing of the evening's music, was meticulously arranged to shape behavior and influence outcomes. The great ballroom, the heart of Rosecliff, functioned as both a theater and a laboratory. Its soaring ceilings, expansive windows, and mirrored walls did more than impress. They magnified every movement, every reaction, turning each dance, each conversation into a statement of intent. Guests were acutely aware of being observed, and Theresa Fair Ulrich's presence loomed over them like an invisible hand guiding the proceedings. Her keen sense of social strategy allowed her to manipulate these dynamics with subtlety, rewarding those who adhered to her unspoken rules and punishing those who misstepped. But Rosecliff was more than a tool for personal power. It became a crucible for the larger social hierarchy of Newport itself. Old families, with lineage stretching back generations, faced the subtle challenge posed by the nouveau rich, newly wealthy individuals eager to cement their status. Every invitation to Rosecliff was a test, a signal of acceptance or exclusion, and the consequences were profound. A carefully timed smile, a private word in the right ear, or a pointed glance could solidify alliances, ignite rivalries, or subtly shift the balance of influence for the entire season. Within this environment, marriages, partnerships, and even business connections were negotiated in the shadows of Rosecliff's ornate halls. The mansion's grandeur provided the perfect backdrop for these delicate transactions. French-inspired salons, Venetian mirrors, and imported chandeliers were not merely decorative. They were instruments of social persuasion, lending credibility and authority to those who moved confidently within the space. To the uninitiated, Rosecliff appeared to be a celebration of wealth and taste, but those attuned to the nuances understood that every detail served a purpose. In addition to the outwardly visible dynamics, the mansion housed an undercurrent of psychological warfare. Guests were subtly pitted against one another, sometimes through the arrangement of seating at dinner, other times through the strategic inclusion of certain individuals in conversations while excluding others. These small acts could have outsized consequences, shifting perceptions of favor, influence, and social standing. Families who believed themselves secure in their place within the hierarchy could find themselves suddenly marginalized, their reputations quietly undermined by Teresa's carefully calibrated interventions. The mansion's staff, too, played a critical role in maintaining the illusion and supporting these strategies. Housekeepers, valets, and footmen were more than servants. They were observers, discreet conduits of information, and silent enforcers of etiquette. Their knowledge of the mansion's rhythms, the host's preferences, and the social interplay of guests made them indispensable. A misplaced detail, a forgotten order, or a rumor allowed to escape could destabilize relationships, alter alliances, and create opportunities for advantage or vengeance. Financially, Rosecliff demanded a level of expenditure that was staggering even by Gilded Age standards. From the imported tapestries and hand-carved furniture to the lavish meals and extravagant entertainment, every element required careful planning and significant investment. Yet, these expenses were not mere extravagance. They were essential for maintaining the mansion's role as a stage of power. A single slip in presentation could tarnish the carefully constructed image of mastery and influence, making the careful orchestration of resources a central concern of the household. Beyond its role in the social hierarchy, Rosecliff functioned as a symbol of aspiration and ambition. Young women, debutantes seeking to secure advantageous marriages, viewed the mansion as the ultimate proving ground. Success within its walls could cement their family status for generations, while failure could lead to quiet exclusion from the most prestigious circles. Observers noted that even the smallest gestures, posture, expression, or tone were scrutinized, evaluated, and interpreted. The mansion, in this sense, was a crucible, refining the social instincts, intelligence, and grace of those who entered its halls. As the season progressed, the mansion's influence extended beyond the walls of Newport itself. Guests carried the impressions and judgments formed at Rosecliff back to their home communities, spreading narratives that could enhance or diminish reputations far from the Rhode Island coast. The mansion had become a nexus of social information, a place where perceptions were crafted, disseminated, and solidified, and where the mastery of its dynamics could determine one's standing for years to come. The interplay of visibility and subtlety within Rosecliff was unmatched. Public dances and formal dinners projected confidence and control, while private chambers and secluded alcoves allowed for whispered negotiations, confidential observations, and strategic planning. It was within these hidden spaces that much of the mansion's true power manifested, shaping relationships and alliances in ways unseen by the broader public. Yet this environment was not without its dangers. The same tools that allowed Teresa to consolidate influence could, if misapplied, create enemies and generate conflict. Misunderstood gestures, overlooked slights, or breaches of etiquette could trigger lasting resentment, disrupt alliances, or fuel long-standing rivalries. The mansion, with its grandeur and complexity, amplified both opportunity and risk, making every decision consequential. By the end of the season, Rosecliff had established itself as more than a residence or social venue. It had become a living organism, responsive to the personalities, ambitions, and strategies of those within it. Its walls contained not only marble and crystal, but the intricate dynamics of power, perception, and social psychology. The mansion's legacy was intertwined with the lives of its inhabitants and guests, a testament to the extraordinary skill, ambition, and sometimes ruthless cunning required to navigate the rarefied world of Newport society. In this way, Rosecliff remained both a symbol and an instrument, its influence extending far beyond the walls of the mansion itself, shaping the trajectories of families, careers, and relationships for generations, and ensuring that its name would endure as a benchmark of both the splendor and the shadowy complexity of Gilded Age social warfare. By the mid-1890s, Rosecliff had transcended its original conception as a mere display of wealth and sophistication. It had become an arena in which the social, political, and personal ambitions of Newport's elite collided in ways both visible and unseen. The mansion's architectural magnificence, a blend of Beaux-Arts elegance with French Renaissance grandeur, served not only as a symbol of opulence but as a deliberate tool of influence. Its sweeping staircases, marble halls, and gold-accented ceilings were designed to impress, to awe, and to subtly communicate power. Guests entering Rosecliff were immediately enveloped in an atmosphere that demanded attention and respect. Every detail, from the ornate chandeliers to the carefully curated art collections, was a deliberate message about the status and authority of its hostess. But beneath the surface of beauty and elegance lay a more intricate layer of psychological maneuvering, a carefully orchestrated game of perception, control, and influence. Theresa Fair-Ulrichs, ever the strategist, understood that true power in Newport society was rarely exercised through overt dominance. Instead, it was cultivated through subtlety, through the careful management of appearances, the selective extension of favors, and the discreet shaping of public opinion. She recognized that a misplaced word, a poorly timed gesture, or a perceived slight could unravel carefully constructed alliances, while a thoughtful compliment, an invitation extended at precisely the right moment, could cement loyalty for years. Within the walls of Rosecliff, every interaction was observed, analyzed, and interpreted. The mansion's expansive design facilitated both public display and private maneuvering. Grand salons and ballrooms hosted elaborate dances, dinners, and receptions that showcased wealth and sophistication, while more intimate spaces, hidden corridors, and secluded chambers allowed for confidential discussions, strategic negotiations, and subtle power plays. Guests, aware of being constantly observed, navigated these spaces with caution, understanding that even minor social errors could carry long-lasting consequences. For newcomers seeking acceptance, Rosecliff functioned as both a proving ground and a gauntlet. Young debutantes aspiring to secure advantageous marriages or solidify their family's standing quickly learned the rules of engagement, the careful modulation of voice, a mastery of posture, the strategic allocation of attention. Success within Rosecliff required more than wealth or beauty. It demanded acute social intelligence, emotional awareness, and a keen understanding of the mansion's invisible hierarchy. Old money families, too, faced challenges within these walls. While their lineage provided a degree of protection and prestige, it did not grant immunity from scrutiny or competition. The mansion's social ecosystem rewarded those who could adapt, navigate, and influence regardless of ancestry. For established families, maintaining their position demanded constant vigilance, a mastery of subtlety, and a willingness to engage in the silent games of negotiation and persuasion that defined life at Rosecliff. In addition to shaping social behavior, the mansion also played a pivotal role in the dissemination of reputation. Stories of triumphs, faux pas, and whispered scandals traveled quickly beyond the estate, carried by guests back to their communities, across the country, and even abroad. Rosecliff functioned as both a stage and a microphone, amplifying the actions and perceptions of those who entered its halls. A well-timed entrance, a perfectly executed bow, or a single glance could ripple outward, influencing alliances, perceptions, and social hierarchies far beyond the confines of Newport. This dynamic created a constant tension within the mansion. Every gesture mattered, every interaction carried weight, and every misstep could trigger repercussions that extended well beyond the evening's festivities. The mansion's staff played an equally critical role in this environment. Far from being passive servants, they were trained observers and discreet enforcers of protocol, ensuring that the mansion's rhythm and hierarchy were maintained. Housekeepers, valets, and footmen possessed intimate knowledge of the mansion's intricate layout, the preferences of the hostess, and the tendencies of guests. Their attentiveness allowed Theresa to manage not only the logistics of grand events, but the subtleties of social influence, using the staff as extensions of her own strategic vision. Yet the power dynamics within Rosecliff were not solely about control or observation. They also fostered alliances, mentorships, and opportunities for advancement. Guests who demonstrated skill, poise, or loyalty could find themselves rewarded with access, favor, and prestige. Positions of influence were not granted arbitrarily. They were earned through the careful cultivation of impression, reputation, and reliability. The mansion, in this sense, operated as both a crucible and a laboratory, testing the abilities, instincts, and resilience of those who entered, while simultaneously shaping the very structure of Newport society itself. Financially, the maintenance of Rosecliff demanded extraordinary resources. The mansion's grandeur, its imported marbles, elaborate woodwork, gilded interiors, and priceless art collections required constant care and attention. Lavish balls and dinners designed to impress and influence demanded precise coordination, significant expenditure, and relentless attention to detail. Despite these costs, the investment was deemed essential, for the mansion's influence extended far beyond the tangible. Its very presence, its aura of refinement and authority, provided a platform through which Teresa and her allies could project power, manage reputations, and control perceptions on a scale unmatched by any other estate in Newport. Within this context, Rosecliff became a lens through which the broader themes of wealth, power, and social psychology could be observed. It was a place where ambition and status collided, where human behavior was amplified by environment and expectation, and where the stakes of success or failure were magnified by the mansion's grandeur and visibility. The mansion shaped not only the actions of those within its walls but the trajectory of their lives, influencing marriages, business opportunities, and alliances for years to come. Perhaps most strikingly, Rosecliff demonstrated how architecture, design, and space could be wielded as instruments of influence. The mansion's scale and beauty were inseparable from its function as a site of power, creating a setting in which perception, impression, and psychological nuance could be carefully managed. In this way, Rosecliff was not merely a home. It was a tool, a weapon, and a stage, shaping the destinies of all who entered and leaving an indelible mark on the social landscape of Newport, Rhode Island. The mansion's enduring legacy lies not only in its architectural brilliance but in its unparalleled role as a theater of human ambition, a crucible of social strategy, and a testament to the extraordinary influence that one estate, under the guidance of a singularly skilled hostess, could wield over an entire society. The story of Rosecliff and the social warfare waged within its walls remains a compelling study of power, perception, and the enduring human fascination with status, influence, and the mechanisms by which it is maintained. By the early 1900s, Rosecliff had evolved into something far more than a mere display of wealth or a social gathering point. It had become a formidable institution of power and influence, where the lines between friendship, alliance, and rivalry were often blurred. The mansion, perched on the shores of Newport with sweeping views of the Atlantic, symbolized not just affluence but control, a silent arbiter of who mattered and who did not. Teresa Fair Ulrichs, its formidable hostess, understood that while money could open doors, perception dictated the true flow of influence. Every ball, every luncheon, every discreetly organized card game was a calculated move in a game where reputations were both currency and weapon. Guests who entered Rosecliff were acutely aware of the stakes. They were not merely attending a party. They were being tested, measured against the invisible metrics of decorum, wit, elegance, and strategic social positioning. A smile offered at the wrong moment could alienate. A misjudged compliment could betray ambition, and a slight social faux pas could reverberate far beyond the boundaries of the mansion's walls. The psychological tension of these gatherings was palpable, a silent drama played out in gestures, glances, and the positioning of bodies within space. Rosecliff's architecture amplified these dynamics. The mansion's grand salons, with ceilings that seemed to stretch toward eternity, allowed large assemblies to convene, yet intimate alcoves and side corridors offered spaces where whispered counsel, secret alliances, and discreet rivalries could unfold away from the public gaze. In this way, the very structure of the house facilitated both spectacle and subtle manipulation, enabling Teresa to orchestrate interactions with the precision of a conductor leading a symphony. One of the most fascinating aspects of Rosecliff's social ecosystem was the interplay between newcomers and established families. For newly arrived wealth, the mansion presented both opportunity and peril. To gain entry into Newport's elite circles was a dream for many, but those who failed to grasp the mansion's unspoken rules quickly found themselves marginalized or subtly ostracized. Success depended on more than charm or fortune. It required acute social intelligence, patience, and an understanding of the mansion's invisible hierarchies. Established families, while ostensibly secure, were not immune from these pressures. They too were scrutinized, their pedigrees and behaviors evaluated against the evolving norms of Newport society. In some cases, long-standing alliances were quietly undermined by younger, ambitious members who had learned to navigate the mansion's labyrinthine social codes with dexterity. Within this context, the mansion functioned as a microcosm of broader societal dynamics, reflecting and magnifying issues of class, gender, and influence. Women, in particular, wielded power in nuanced and indirect ways. As hostesses, they set the tone for gatherings, curated guest lists, and subtly guided conversations, shaping perceptions and outcomes without ever appearing overtly authoritative. Their influence was as formidable as it was invisible, and Rosecliff became a proving ground for the skills and instincts necessary to maintain status within this elite environment. Beyond interpersonal dynamics, the mansion's events had economic and political implications. Marriages brokered within its walls could consolidate wealth. Alliances formed over champagne and caviar could impact business ventures. And social endorsements offered by prominent families could open doors to national or even international influence. Every interaction had layers of significance, and those who failed to recognize this often suffered consequences that extended far beyond the immediate social moment. Moreover, Rosecliff was a stage for performance in its most literal sense. Balls, receptions, and dinners were choreographed affairs, with timing, placement, and presentation all carefully considered. Guests learned quickly that to misstep was to risk social exile, and to excel could elevate a family's standing for generations. The mansion's staff played a critical yet often invisible role in these performances. Valets, footmen, and housekeepers acted as both facilitators and observers, ensuring that events proceeded flawlessly while discreetly monitoring interactions. Their presence allowed Teresa to exercise control over the environment without appearing overbearing, leveraging the staff's attentiveness as an extension of her own influence. Yet despite its veneer of perfection, Rosecliff was also a crucible of tension and anxiety. Beneath the glittering chandeliers and polished floors, rivalries simmered, alliances shifted, and personal insecurities were magnified by the mansion's intense social spotlight. Guests often left with a sense of exhilaration and exhaustion, having navigated an environment in which success was rewarded, mistakes punished, and perception was everything. The mansion's very opulence served as both shield and weapon. Its grandeur inspired awe and deference, creating an implicit hierarchy in which those deemed unworthy or misaligned with Teresa's vision of society found themselves subtly marginalized. Over time, Rosecliff's influence extended beyond the confines of Newport, shaping perceptions, reputations, and relationships in New York, London, and Paris. Families who aspired to participate in these circles understood that their behavior at Rosecliff could determine not only immediate social standing but long-term opportunities, alliances, and marriages. The mansion thus became a nexus where personal ambition intersected with societal expectation, where elegance masked psychological warfare, and where power was exercised through subtlety rather than force. Its legacy is not merely one of architectural brilliance or luxurious living. It is a study in the mechanics of influence, the psychology of status, and the enduring human fascination with hierarchy and prestige. The story of Rosecliff is, at its core, a story of strategy, ambition, and the delicate art of social survival. It reveals how one mansion, guided by a single host, could wield extraordinary power over the lives of countless individuals, shaping the very structure of Newport's elite society. and leaving behind a narrative that continues to captivate historians, social scientists, and curious observers alike. The mansion remains to this day a testament to the subtle yet profound ways in which architecture, wealth, and intelligence can converge to shape human behavior, influence perception, and construct legacies that extend far beyond the walls that contain them. Rosecliff's history is a reminder that in the gilded halls of power, influence is often less about wealth alone and more about mastery of perception, manipulation of circumstance, and the art of navigating the invisible rules that govern society. As the 20th century progressed, Rosecliff's reputation as the ultimate arbiter of social legitimacy only deepened. By now, the mansion had transcended the role of mere residence. It was a stage on which the theater of elite society unfolded with both precision and subtle menace. For newcomers to Newport, the prospect of receiving an invitation was both exhilarating and terrifying. To enter the mansion's storied halls was to be measured against generations of expectation, an unspoken ledger of manners, wealth, and lineage. Every handshake, every curtsy, every glance carried weight far beyond the immediate moment. The mansion's physical grandeur amplified the psychological stakes. Its vast marble staircases, ornate gilded ceilings, and expansive ballrooms created an atmosphere of awe, designed not simply to impress, but to enforce hierarchy. Within this environment, one's social acumen became as important as one's fortune. Guests learned to navigate conversations with delicacy, to present themselves in ways that balanced deference and charm, and to recognize the subtle signals of approval or disfavor from the mansion's formidable matron, Teresa Fair Ulrichs. These gatherings were not merely spectacles. They were battlegrounds, arenas where influence was earned and reputations forged or fractured. Unlike many other estates of the Gilded Age, Rosecliff's power was less about overt extravagance and more about the meticulous orchestration of social dynamics. Every event was carefully curated, from the guest list to the seating arrangements, from the timing of the meals to the placement of music and decor. Teresa understood that the illusion of spontaneity was essential. The mansion had to feel effortless, yet every element was engineered to consolidate her authority and reinforce the implicit hierarchy among Newport's elite. The mansion's influence extended far beyond its walls, shaping social networks in New York, Boston, London, and Paris. Families understood that their standing at Rosecliff could determine the success of marriages, business alliances, and social ventures. A single misstep, an inappropriate word, an ill-timed laugh, a perceived slight could resonate for years, altering opportunities and reputations with a subtle yet enduring force. Women in particular wielded the mansion's invisible power with extraordinary skill. They acted as gatekeepers, curating the guest list, guiding conversation, and subtly influencing alliances. The art of hostessing at Rosecliff was a sophisticated exercise in diplomacy, strategy, and psychological insight. Success required a keen understanding of personalities, motivations, and the ever-shifting currents of social perception. In these salons, whispers could carry more weight than speeches, and a glance could serve as a judgment more powerful than any public declaration. Beyond the interpersonal, Rosecliff was a crucible for generational ambition. Young heirs and heiresses were introduced to the mansion's rituals as part of their social education, learning to navigate expectations, perform with elegance, and assert influence without overstepping bounds. The mansion functioned as both mentor and trial, cultivating refinement while enforcing conformity to the unspoken codes of elite society. Economic and political stakes were intertwined with social ones. Marriages brokered within Rosecliff's walls often consolidated fortunes and influence. Business opportunities could hinge on approval from prominent families, and subtle endorsements during gatherings could open doors to positions of national significance. The mansion's power lay in its ability to blend spectacle with strategy, using beauty, luxury, and ceremony as instruments of social control. Yet beneath the polished surfaces, tensions simmered. Rivalries were intense, alliances fragile, and personal insecurities magnified by constant scrutiny. Families who had long enjoyed prominence in Newport sometimes found themselves challenged by newcomers whose wealth and ambition matched or exceeded their own. The mansion's environment was unforgiving. Charm and grace were essential, but vigilance and cunning were equally important. Staff members played crucial, often invisible, roles in these dynamics. Valets, housekeepers, and footmen acted as extensions of Teresa's influence, monitoring interactions, ensuring protocol, and subtly shaping the atmosphere of events. Their presence allowed Teresa to maintain control without appearing domineering, leveraging their attentiveness as both shield and instrument. The mansion's architecture itself reinforced these social hierarchies. Expansive halls allowed grand entrances and sweeping gestures, while hidden alcoves and side corridors facilitated private negotiations and whispered counsel. Guests learned to read the space as carefully as they read each other, understanding how movement, placement, and presence could convey status or intention. Over time, Rosecliff became a locus of both aspiration and anxiety, a place where the allure of inclusion was balanced by the fear of misstep. Its events were a form of social calculus where every smile, comment, and gesture carried implications far beyond the immediate moment. The mansion's legacy is inseparable from these rituals of power. Its history demonstrates how wealth, taste, and intelligence can converge to create environments that shape behavior, perceptions, and social hierarchies. Rosecliff's story is not merely one of opulence and parties, but of influence, strategy, and the subtle art of social engineering. It reveals a world in which perception often outweighed reality, where the most powerful played in plain sight, and where mastery of etiquette and psychology could define a lifetime of success or failure. Today, Rosecliff stands as a monument not only to architectural brilliance but to the intricate, often ruthless social ecosystem it once governed. Its halls echo with the lessons of ambition, decorum, and the quiet, enduring power of influence, a testament to the mansion's extraordinary role in shaping the elite society of Newport and beyond. A world in which every gesture mattered and where survival depended as much on subtlety as on wealth. In understanding Rosecliff, we uncover a blueprint for the exercise of soft power, a study of human behavior, and a glimpse into the complex interplay between architecture, social dynamics, and ambition that defined the Gilded Age. By the early decades of the 20th century, Rosecliff had not only cemented its position as Newport's social epicenter, but had also become an enduring symbol of the complex interplay between wealth, influence, and personal ambition. The mansion's power was subtle, operating not through force or decree, but through the careful orchestration of perception and expectation. Families who were newly wealthy quickly learned that Rosecliff was as much a test as a reward. To be welcomed into its lavish salons required more than money. It demanded finesse, social intelligence, and an understanding of the intricate, often invisible codes that govern behavior within its walls. For many, the mansion represented a crucible in which social standing could be made or undone. The elite were acutely aware that appearances were never superficial at Rosecliff. Every gesture, every exchange, every smile or frown could carry consequences that reverberated far beyond the evening's festivities. Young women attending their first balls under Teresa Ulrich's watchful eye were tutored in the art of observation, learning to read expressions, gauge interest, and navigate conversations with precision. These lessons were not merely performative. They were essential for survival in a world where missteps could jeopardize marriages, business deals, and familial reputation. Men, too, were scrutinized, their wealth and lineage evaluated alongside their manners, conversational skill, and capacity to engage with subtlety and tact. Rosecliff's influence extended well beyond Newport, shaping alliances across the United States and Europe. Families understood that inclusion within its walls could open doors to prestigious circles, while exclusion or even a minor slight could isolate them socially and professionally. The mansion became a theater for the exercise of soft power, where influence was wielded through charm, strategy, and the calculated management of appearances. Within this environment, the elite developed a sophisticated understanding of human behavior, exploiting the nuances of perception to their advantage. Subtle signals, a prolonged gaze, a carefully timed compliment, or the strategic placement of an individual within the room could establish hierarchy and communicate judgment without a word being spoken. This skillful management of perception was critical, as Rosecliff's authority was maintained not through coercion but through consensus, through the collective acknowledgement of its power by those who sought to participate in its rituals. Rivalries among families were often masked by politeness and ceremony, yet they were no less intense for their subtlety. The mansion's events became arenas in which alliances were negotiated, reputations built or undermined, and influence asserted with the precision of a chess match. The seemingly effortless elegance of Rosecliff's gatherings was underpinned by meticulous planning and an intimate understanding of social psychology. Every detail, from the arrangement of tables to the timing of music, from the design of floral displays to the selection of menu items, was calculated to create an environment in which the mansion's power could be demonstrated subtly but unmistakably. In this context, Teresa Ulrich's role was both matriarchal and strategic. She commanded the mansion's operations with a blend of grace and authority that left little room for challenge. Her judgments, often delivered in the form of casual remarks or subtle gestures, carried the weight of generations of social knowledge. Guests learned to internalize her approval or disapproval, understanding that her assessment could influence their standing long after the event had ended. The mansion's architecture amplified these dynamics. High ceilings, sweeping staircases, and expansive ballrooms allowed for dramatic entrances and public display, while more intimate spaces facilitated private negotiation and observation. Guests learned to navigate these spaces as carefully as they navigated the social hierarchy, recognizing that every movement and every interaction was being observed, recorded, and interpreted. Over time, Rosecliff became a repository of social memory, a place where reputations were built, challenged, and preserved. Families passed down lessons learned within its walls to younger generations, perpetuating a culture of vigilance, strategy, and performance. The mansion's influence was cyclical. It shaped behavior, which in turn reinforced its authority, creating a self-perpetuating system of social regulation. Yet beneath the surface of elegance and refinement, tensions simmered. Wealthy families who had long enjoyed prominence in Newport occasionally found themselves challenged by ambitious newcomers, whose fortunes and ambitions rivaled their own. Jealousies, rivalries, and insecurities were ever present, subtly influencing interactions and shaping the outcomes of social engagements. The mansion's environment was unforgiving, and those unprepared for its scrutiny could quickly find themselves marginalized. Staff members, from valets to housekeepers, played essential roles in maintaining Rosecliff's authority. Their presence allowed the matron to manage events with precision, ensuring that every guest's behavior was observed and subtly guided. These invisible agents of influence helped sustain the mansion's power, operating behind the scenes to reinforce social hierarchies and preserve the illusion of effortless grandeur. As the years passed, Rosecliff became not only a symbol of wealth and taste, but a case study in the mechanics of social influence. Its legacy demonstrates how architecture, ceremony, and human behavior can intersect to create environments that mold perception and assert authority without overt force. The mansion's story reveals a world in which appearances were carefully managed, relationships strategically navigated, and influence exercised with subtlety and skill. Understanding Rosecliff is to understand the delicate and often ruthless dance of elite society, where survival depended not merely on wealth but on the mastery of observation, performance, and subtle manipulation. In the end, Rosecliff was more than a mansion. It was an institution, a social laboratory, in which the principles of power, perception, and prestige were tested and refined. Its walls, decorated with opulence and echoing with the conversations of Newport's elite, stand as a testament to the enduring complexity of human behavior in the rarefied worlds of the wealthy and the powerful. Through its history, we see that wealth alone could not guarantee success. It was the ability to navigate, perform, and influence within the mansion's carefully constructed social ecosystem that determined one's ultimate standing. Rosecliff, in all its grandeur and menace, remains a monument to this reality, a place where social mastery was both art and weapon, and where the stakes were nothing less than a lifetime of reputation, influence, and legacy. As the decades progressed, Rosecliff Mansion transitioned from a mere symbol of wealth and opulence into a living chronicle of the aspirations, anxieties, and rivalries that defined Newport's elite society. Its walls had witnessed triumphs and humiliations alike, recording not only the grand successes of families who navigated its social labyrinth, but also the quiet collapses of those who misjudged its intricate rules. By the 1930s, the mansion had outlived its initial purpose as a staging ground for extravagant balls. Yet its influence remained potent, though subtly altered by the shifting economic and cultural landscape. The Great Depression had reshaped America's social and financial order, and the heirs of the Gilded Age confronted a new reality. Wealth alone could no longer ensure unquestioned authority within Newport or in the wider social sphere. Even as fortunes fluctuated, the mansion's aura persisted, rooted not in material splendor alone, but in the intangible codes and memories it had cultivated over decades. Families who had once wielded unquestioned influence found themselves grappling with the persistent expectation to perform, to maintain the appearance of stability and refinement even as economic pressures mounted. Rosecliff's social theater, once dominated by the assured hand of Teresa Ulrichs, now relied on a more distributed form of authority, with tradition and precedent guiding behavior as much as any individual matriarch could. Newcomers, whether wealthy industrialists or heirs to emerging fortunes, approached the mansion with a mixture of reverence and apprehension, keenly aware that their acceptance into Newport society would be mediated by the mansion's invisible but omnipresent standards. Every detail of behavior, how one dressed, whom one spoke to, the tone of one's laughter was still scrutinized with remarkable precision, reflecting the mansion's enduring capacity to enforce social hierarchies even in changing times. Rosecliff had become a crucible in which social norms were tested, refined, and transmitted, shaping not only the immediate interactions of its guests but also the cultural memory of Newport itself. Families passed down stories of triumphs and humiliations within its walls, codifying lessons on etiquette, influence, and subtle strategy. The mansion had become as much a school as a social stage, instructing each generation in the mechanics of prestige, power, and performance. Yet for all its instructive utility, Rosecliff remained a site of conflict and contestation. Rivalries that had begun in whispered comments over hors d'oeuvres escalated into long-term vendettas, often perpetuated through strategic alliances, deliberate exclusions, and calculated public gestures. Marriages arranged or dissolved on the basis of perceived compatibility or status frequently reflected the mansion's influence, as families sought to consolidate power, secure wealth, or enhance reputation through careful social navigation. The mansion's private quarters, from secluded parlors to upstairs sitting rooms, became laboratories for observation, negotiation, and sometimes manipulation, where confidences were exchanged, reputations built or undermined, and alliances cemented or broken. In these quieter spaces, the mansion's authority was perhaps most palpable, revealing the subtle mechanisms by which social power operated outside the glare of public spectacle. Staff members continued to play a critical, though largely invisible, role in maintaining Rosecliff's social order. Housekeepers, valets, and maids functioned as both witnesses and enforcers, ensuring that the mansion's rituals unfolded according to plan while subtly guiding behavior to preserve the hierarchy. Their presence reinforced the mansion's authority, a reminder that even the most minute gestures and choices could have consequences, and that the surveillance of social norms was continuous and uncompromising. Over time, Rosecliff became more than a home or a venue. It became a repository of social memory and an enduring emblem of elite social warfare. Its influence reached beyond Newport, shaping perceptions of status, taste, and propriety across the United States and Europe. Families who had engaged with the mansion carried its lessons into other social contexts, perpetuating a culture of vigilance, performance, and strategic interaction that extended far beyond the immediate sphere of Newport society. Even as the mansion faced the inexorable passage of time, with economic fluctuations, changing tastes, and the rise of new social centers, its legacy persisted. Visitors and scholars would later reflect on Rosecliff not merely as an architectural marvel, but as a microcosm of the social dynamics that had governed America's wealthiest families. Its grandeur and its rituals revealed the complexities of human behavior in concentrated form, demonstrating how power could be exercised subtly, how influence could be asserted without overt force, and how reputations could be built or dismantled through careful observation and strategic action. In essence, Rosecliff Mansion was a crucible of social power, a place where the principles of hierarchy, influence, and prestige were continuously tested and refined. Its history underscores that wealth alone was insufficient to guarantee success or survival in the rarefied world of the American elite. Mastery of social intelligence, the ability to perform, and the skill to navigate subtle rivalries were equally critical. The mansion's walls, filled with the echoes of conversations, laughter, and unspoken judgments, stand as a testament to the intricate dance of elite society, a world where every gesture mattered, every interaction carried weight, and the consequences of missteps could reverberate across generations. In the final analysis, Rosecliff is not merely a building, but a symbol of the human desire for recognition, the relentless pursuit of status, and the enduring complexities of social influence. Its story, replete with ambition, strategy, and subtle conflict, offers a window into a world both dazzling and ruthless, where the stakes were nothing less than legacy itself. As we look upon the mansion today, one cannot help but sense that every corner, every ornate detail, and every echoing hall bears witness to the triumphs and tragedies, the machinations and the mastery of the families who once called it home. Rosecliff remains, in every sense, a living testament to the dark, elegant, and enduring power of social warfare among America's wealthiest. A place where the pursuit of status shaped not only the lives of those within its walls, but the course of Newport's elite society for generations.